Welcome to Figure Eight, where we feature inspiring stories of women entrepreneurs who have grown their businesses to 7 and 8 figures revenue. If you're in the mix of growing a bigger business, these stories are for you. Join us as we explore where the tough spots are, how to overcome them, and how to prepare yourself for the next portion of the climb. I'm your host, Julie Ellis. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a growth and leadership coach who co-founded, grew, and exited an 8-figure business. This led me to exploring why some women achieve great things. And that led to my book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Let's explore the systems, processes, and people that help us grow our businesses to new heights. If you're interested in growing your business, this podcast will help. Now, let's get going. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Figure Eight. My name is Julie Ellis, your host, and I am very excited today to welcome Sherry Shannon-Vanstone to the podcast. Sherry is a purpose-driven, successful serial tech entrepreneur known for building high-performance teams. And this woman, she's a trailblazer. She has spent most of her career in information security, taking strategic risks, and leading her startups to successful exits in both Silicon Valley and in the Toronto-Waterloo corridor. She has had 2 IPOs and 2 other acquisitions, and I'm so excited to talk to her today about the landscape of women investing, about how she's grown her businesses, and about what exciting things she's up to now in the world. So welcome, Sherry.
Thank you, Julie. It's great to be here with you and looking forward to this conversation today.
So am I. I'm so excited to talk to you because I think, as I was looking over your bio and looking at the notes from when we talked before and just thinking about, what it must have been like for you starting out in your career, working for the US government as a mathematician and how that sort of winding path led you to Canada and where you are now and all of the things.
Yes, I'm ready to jump in.
Okay, so why don't you tell me about those sort of early years and how you became an entrepreneur in the beginning?
So I have a master's degree in mathematics from the University of Tennessee, and when I was interviewing after obtaining that degree, I found it quite interesting at that time that they didn't really know what to do with women mathematicians. I think we all were supposed to teach high school or university. Uh, so they asked me if I would wanted to go back. The people I interviewed with, companies I interviewed, and go back and get an engineering degree. And I go, no, because mathematicians make fun of engineers. So anyway,
There's a healthy competition there.
yeah, and when I was a teaching assistant, so I taught a lot of engineers when I at grad school. So anyway, I finally found a job that wanted me to be a mathematician, and that was with the U.S. government as a cryptologic mathematician. So I joined that organization and learned so much. Of course, I spent 6 years there, and during that time, especially my last 2 years, I was in a position where I was working with the State Department and doing some liaison work with industry. And I had an opportunity to really get to know some startups and some large corporations too. And I just felt that, oh, I really like this atmosphere, especially in the startup area. And so when it came an opportunity, and my boss's boss at this organization told me, Sherry, you've had 2 promotions in 2 years. Um, you're a stellar performer, but you're not going to go any further in this office. And it's because my direct boss, wasn't going anywhere, and that would have been the position that I would be moving into, and he wasn't moving because he was going to retire in that, and that's why my boss's boss was telling me this, and so I thinking, he said, well, you're going to have to move on, and I thought, well, if I'm moving on, I'm moving on. So I I contacted one of the companies that I had met during this position that I had, and yes, they wanted me. They're a startup, right? The startups want people, and that will do almost anything. And so I went to Silicon Valley, and one of the reasons I did was because I felt that the desire to, I won't say control, but to be more in control of my own destiny, especially financially.
Mm. Yes.
Yes.
Well, and I mean, talk about two things that are kind of at polar ends of the spectrum in terms of big government and where you were. And then all of a sudden you end up in startup land, which is, completely different environment.
Yeah. And the wonderful thing is that with a startup, they need a variety of skills. Right? So I had my mathematics background, a very technical background, but I wanted to be in sales. So that was awesome for me because I was one of the only salesperson who understood the technology that we were selling inside and out. And it was an information security company. And so it was perfect for me. And I still was able to do a little bit of technical work, but it was because of that foundation I had in information security by being a cryptologic mathematician, and also the credibility that I had. So I asked the startup, Xilinx, the name, and I asked the president if I could be head of sales in Asia Pacific and South America, Latin America. I spent a year in Costa Rica. I had a degree also in Spanish, and I thought, oh, that would be great. Well, me, what did I know? I so I just started out, and it was great, the reception that I received in Asia Pacific, especially in countries such as Japan, where a woman, especially a Western woman, is an anomaly, especially in a business setting. There's specific roles at that time, and maybe even now, that it said this is what a woman does in that society. So, with the degree that I had and with my credentials, I was accepted, and it really positioned me to be very successful with dealing with large multinational companies, which we sold to in those areas, such as IBM and the Bank of Japan. So large entities that that probably would have looked at me differently without my credentials. So it was great to have those, and also because I knew what I was talking about in the sales. I wasn't just a salesperson; I was a salesperson with a deep knowledge of the mathematics behind what I was selling.
Hmm. Which meant, I imagine, that you could not only sort of sell, but you could also answer a lot of the technical questions that would come back during that process,
Yeah.
which would speed up the cycle of
Yes.
closing deals, I would think.
Yes, and it did. So I ended up not continuing with Latin America because I was so busy with Asia Pacific. So I was the director of sales for Asia Pacific, handling from Japan to New Zealand. Had the opportunity to travel. I think it was 13 different countries, 13 different cultures, and was able to set up an office in Singapore, get the revenue from very low to over $2 million in a few years. So, and it was a great legacy that I had there when I decided to step back and just do domestic sales after that. But it was a great opportunity, and you get that with a startup, an opportunity that probably would not have been. Uh, well, maybe I would have, with my credentials and my background, but to being able to redefine my own job. Yeah,
Yes.
it was
And use the entrepreneurial skill set that
yeah,
would serve you so well then as you continue to progress in your career.
yes, and then with the entrepreneurial part, I would say that I learned, and this is a tough one because I'm on my fifth startup now. Uh, is sometimes it feels like you're going one step forward and two steps back. So you just have to persevere and persist, and believe that this is going to happen. You don't know when it's going to happen. It may take years for it to happen, and as you know, and or it may take and then you get a break. You get someone who comes along and wants to buy your company, or someone comes along that will position you as a strategic partnership to prepare you for an IPO, or so it's just that's the that's something I did learn there, in Asia Pacific, dealing with many different cultures, but also setting up all these distribution channels and working with multinationals. That you get, once you get in, you're in with these larger corporations. No.
Yes. So it's being persistent enough to get the door to open for you.
Yes, yes, and showing up. I want to just tell you one story. And when I was in Australia, I was selling these fax encryptors to trying to the federal, the Australian Federal Police. That's the FBI. Or I don't know what it would be here, the RCMP in Canada. Um, I was there. I was the only vendor that came to the meeting in person. The US vendors, others were not there. I was on them. So I sat there and waited for the decision. There was between three companies, my company, two other companies. And they said, we're not going to give it to you. We're giving it to X company. And I'm sitting there knowing X company, and I knew X company was not telling the truth about the product. They didn't have the product, all of this. But I had to sit there and listen to this. Would I really wanted to cry, but I had to sit there thinking, I can get through this. I'm not going to go low. I'm going to go stay high on this one and sit through this hour meeting. So I leave. I go back to my hotel and I go for a jog. When I get back, I get a call. That's a call, a message from me at the hotel line. And they said, please call back. And so I did. And they said, come back. We're going to give it to you.
Ah,
Because
so
you showed up,
interesting.
you were here. And maybe also my non-negative response to their decision, the first decision. Yeah.
You passed a test you didn't know you were taking.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But just being there and going to Australia and going to Asia Pacific, I would spend 3 weeks stints there. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of
Just
time away from,
traveling through the region.
yes. And I was there so much that my customers thought I lived in Australia. So I thought, yeah, that's good, good. So anyway, it was about, so I learned a big lesson is that showing up and how you react to negative, um, non-positive, not happy about it news. So yes.
And now, I mean, how it's so, fascinating to me. I mean, here you have 4 exits already. You have 2 IPOs and 2 sales, and you're at it again, which I do want to make sure we get to today because I think it's really interesting what you're doing now. But how did you create, by showing up, how did you create those opportunities?
um, I, I believe that trying to listen, I'm still trying to learn that, continuously learn and remind myself about listening to the customer and what they need and being an advocate for them, but especially in um, as a startup and you're going back to the company and you're telling them that this is what the customers are asking for, and sometimes they don't want to hear that. So it's just being an advocate for my customers and then letting them know I'm here. I'm not selling a widget that you'll never see me again. I'm a partner in this, especially we did large worldwide deployments of information security equipment. So they have to know that the company can do that, and also that I would be their advocate worldwide. So yeah. So that was part of that learning that maybe as a larger company, um, it had more infrastructure. So I did throw myself completely into the job. I was married at the time. I didn't have children, but I spent 1 year, 250 nights away from home. Yeah. So I think there is a sacrifice that we all make and I think that's one of the things that entrepreneurs need to understand. Uh, and you may not have to spend 250 nights away because you may have a local company and dealing, but there is that, and I've heard your story, how, you started in a basement and then you go somewhere else and it's a lot of work and you were doing everything from, the product, shipping it to, handling the logistics and all of that. And so, on, on my journey, it has been, keep moving forward, you're going to have setbacks, and try to stay in there long enough to get that break. Because I believe if you keep showing up and you're persistent and advocating and listening to the customers, that you're going to find. Sometimes you have to pivot the product, and we have done that at my current company. So that happens too.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's thinking of keeping with the dance, right? That forward and back, like it can feel hard and difficult and demoralizing, or I think you can look at it like a dance. You're dancing your way forward and you take a couple of steps
Mhm.
back, and there's a rhythm to it that I think if you can find it and, keep peeling away those layers and figuring out what's at the heart of it and not being afraid to make that product fit that you're looking for. So the market wants you.
Yeah.
Um, it takes persistence, though, for
Yes.
sure. And
Yes.
there are days where you wonder why you ever started.
Yes. I would say in every company I've been involved with, I I been in the middle of it. I go, why did I think that this was going to be easier this time? Uh, and I believe it is easier because I think you understand that it's not going to be a great high all the time. There's going to be disappointments, and uh, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think you learn how to put the resources around you and you have more means in terms of maybe financial, but also just means in terms of the network that you build and the people that
yes,
you know to put people around you to help you solve those problems.
yes. And when I was in information security, I could do that well because I tell everybody I knew who to hire and who not to hire, and I think that's a big plus. And who is a team player, who's not a team player. So when I left Silicon Valley, um, one main reason was I wanted to be more involved. I was a senior manager, I was a shareholder in the company, but I wasn't um, as influential as I'd hoped. I was the only woman in senior management, and I was the only one who really would stand up to the CEO. And it was quite toxic environment for both male and female. And I had several women on my staff and men that I just had to fight for all the time. And so I decided that I wanted to be part of a company that I could have more influence. Start a company or come in as a partner or early,
But at that kind
investment.
of like founding level.
Yes, yeah. And so when I came to Canada, that's what I was looking for. Well, what I mean, came to Canada, I found some companies in Canada that I thought this could work for me, and so I interviewed in Ottawa and I interviewed in Mississauga, and ended up with a company called Certicom, and I was in there as again one of the investors and one of the individuals that was taking a very good position in the U.S. and coming to Canada. And when I told the chairman of the board who I was interviewing with what I was making, because I was a commission and
And very
salary,
successful.
and very successful, and he fell off his chair when he and then I'm taking a cut because it's U.S. dollars, Canadian dollar, taxes, and all that. And so it was a risk, and I was willing to make it because I really believed that I could help build a culture of inclusivity, of respect of others, and also that I was a leader in this in information security. I came in, I was able to do great things there too. I ended up becoming involved with the founder of the company, and so I did step aside and taken um, stepped away from the company for that reason, but still stayed involved as an investor in the company. But I wasn't day to day. As the company grew, there was this sense of perspective of there was nepotism. And here I could say, no, I've been in this area for 15 years, and this is what I've done. But for the optics, I stepped away, but still stayed involved because I was with the founder of the company, and so that I kept coming back and doing consulting work and things. That while I worked at Mastercard for a year in New York, and I started consulting for some of the banks and started my own consulting company, but kept coming back as they needed me on special projects. And then when BlackBerry acquired Certicom, we did security for BlackBerry, not just BlackBerry, but all of the cell phone vendors. We it was a little better than I could come on back on as a resource for them. So, but what I found though, that even though I was one of the founders or being related to the founder, I really didn't have as much influence as I hoped I would. So in 2011, when I left BlackBerry, then my late husband Scott left BlackBerry in 2012, we decided to found our own company, just the two of us. And then it was great that we could then completely, it's not completely, but um, have more say in what happened. And then Scott passed away in 2014, and then I took on the CEO role. And I wanted to build this foundation of culture of a team. And we had 40 people when I sold the company, very culture based, core values. Um, and I would say that if you spoke to any of them today, they would say that was something that was unique for them being in a company that was so strong, and it was part of our foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like at Mabel's Labels, that was a huge part of what we did was having those core values, having that culture foundation, having a lot of fun together.
Yes,
And, we also had things like unlimited vacation and, we ran on a results only work environment. So people were judged on the quality of the work they were turning out, not on whether they were 5 minutes late to the office every
yes,
day.
yeah,
And that really made the culture something people wanted to be a part of,
yes, yeah, yeah. I'm
which
sorry.
was definitely a competitive advantage for us.
Yes, and that was one of the things that you find out later is it's not just the people that you work with, it's the people who leave and then want to come back. And they go, oh, I thought I wanted to leave for another opportunity, and it's not the same. It's not the cultures there. It's not the respect. It's not the appreciation for your work and your contribution. And so yes, that's happened to me both Touch Point and then where I am with now with Profound Impact. We had a couple and some of it was just that we gave them flexibility. We said we still need you, but go off and be fractional with us and fractional with them and see what happens. And then they come back and say, no, I want to be here. Uh, yes,
It's interesting to see though, isn't it? Like the way you were doing things a decade ago is where the world is arriving now. Like it's so interesting to see the curve of, some of those things at that time were very sort of revolutionary in business. And now
yeah,
they're really common.
yeah. I think I held on to it and wanted it was because I saw what the toxicity in the company I was with in Silicon Valley and what they did to the morale of the people. And how many people we lost, very good talent because of that. So I thought, you know what, that we can do it better. We can do better than this. And
Yeah, like you think of what you can do with a high caliber of people and a great work environment with great culture and core values. It's like a rocket ship you can all get
yes,
onto together.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when did you realize that, that team building piece was unique in sort of what you could bring to the table? Was it at that time when you built that team or did you kind of know already?
I believe it was when I built the team at Trust Point. Um, it was the first time that I was the only founder. I mean, after Scott passed away, so I'm the sole founder, uh, and therefore, I mean, Scott had many, many other talents. Even one of my later became a shareholder. Told me, he said, "I don't see you moving forward with this company on your own." And I mean, I was known in the area. Scott was much more well known in the academic area, and he ended up having 450 patents at BlackBerry at Certicom and before it sold to BlackBerry. So he had a very strong core, and we were invited to be the security experts for the U.S. Department of Transportation, being a Canadian company, in the driverless car and connected vehicle space because of Scott, not me. Even though I had, my background with the U.S. government, it was because of his credentials and his abilities. So, um, yeah, we have different skill sets. So mine was about, let's concentrate on building the best team, bringing the best people. And again, I know many of the people that I hired, because I hired them. They had worked at Certicom with me, or I knew them through the industry, so I knew who to hire and who not to hire. Of course, when the company got past maybe 15 people, that wasn't the case, so I had to start. But by then, we had a core um, culture and the core values, and so people could see that when they came in, and so
Yeah.
that we were
And
able to.
and the team then who was hiring also was hiring with that
Yes,
mirror in front of them.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I'd say that that was when I really saw it come to fruition, and it wasn't just a theory of mine that this could really work, that culture does matter. And so it was a little disappointing after I sold my company, um, that uh, it didn't continue.
Yeah, that is the really hard thing about letting go of your babies.
Yes,
Right?
I've never had children, but I've told everyone. I said, it's as if your son, when they get married, you are still the mother, but you're not in control anymore. You're not really guiding their life, because the wife and the family. So I felt that way, and it was I said this when I was going through the acquisition. It was Robert Bosch, a private German company, who bought TrustPoint. And there's a couple of reasons I chose to sell. One, we were in the automotive industry. We were doing security and putting it on the automobiles. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of liability. And we're just a startup. And so I found, and I talked to some advisors. I said, how can I get them to accept my T's and C's? And he said, you can't. You're too small. So I thought, well, I need to have a partner. And really, I was looking for just an investment from Bosch. And that's how it came in the beginning. They were going to invest. And of course, that would have been great. Well, after I found out more about them, I love them. They're a private corporate company that's 97% owned by a foundation that builds hospitals and schools around the world with with the profits. And and so I love that. It aligned with me, my core values, and it also was. I knew another company that they had acquired, a German company, but I knew them in the space, and I thought that had gone well, but I wasn't on the inside. And then I knew their local person. He was my late husband's academic son, so he got his master's degree with Scott. So I thought, these are the stars are aligned and everything's aligned. Yeah, yes, and that's great. And but the biggest mistake I made was not shopping around and looking at a Canadian company. Yeah. So I signed an LOI with the Robert Bosch, and a few days later, I received a telephone call from a Canadian company that wanted to acquire us. It was just like, I missed that. Uh,
Yep.
so it could have kept it Canadian, and that's what I would have hoped to do. And I don't know what the culture would have been different anyway. So, um, but I did only agree to stay on from 1 year of transition, and I think that was best for me. So
Right.
yeah,
Well, and that's a whole interesting dance
yes,
in the selling or exiting of a business is yes, what does the acquirer want from the founders? And 1 year is often very short.
yes.
Yeah. But a good decision in hindsight, like to have made to only stay a year.
Yes. They had asked for two. I agreed to one, and with an option. And I think at the end, I, they weren't utilizing me in the way that I thought they should. Again, that was a different culture. And then I was also seeing what was happening to the culture, and not being able to, again, being that mother of the groom, uh, that I could not control it. I did not have any
Not being
influence.
able to have that influence and continue to have the guiding hand that had
Yeah.
really kept things on that
Yes.
path.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you left there, I mean, it was on to another business, really.
Well, I left there March 31st, 2018, and I thought I'm just going to rewire. I'm not going to start another company. I even said that publicly. And I said I would write a book about what happened to me, but I'm not going to read it again because I'm not doing it again. so, uh, but a few months later, I was talking to University of Waterloo about a project, and we were talking about a project that would measure the worldwide impact of the math faculty. And because Scott, my late husband, had been a faculty member there for 35 years, we thought that would be a good start. And it started out with a story about Scott, but I said, no, it's bigger than this, and it's not a book. It's got to be dynamic, and the influence is still going on. The impact is still occurring. So I think it's something that needs to be um, more dynamic platform. And so then I quickly realized that the university did not have the time or the resources to do it. So I said, I guess I'll start another company. So that got me that pushed me into the area of data analytics, big data, and AI.
Which, although to those of us who are non-mathematicians, sounds like they wouldn't be all that far from each other, but really you entered a whole new
Yes,
field when you
yes,
started this
and
company. Where you sort of set your expertise down at the door and had to go through with a learner mentality, and that, how were you going to put together what you needed
yes,
to do?
and I didn't realize quickly enough that I didn't know what I didn't know. Um, um, so I, I set up the company, Profound Impact, to be to be a virtual company. Now this was 2018, and but I wanted some people that I'd worked with previously that were in the U.S. and across Canada, and I said, why not? This is not a security company, and we don't have to have with the brick and mortar. A security company with all the development of the software, very controlled servers, everything's locked down, and so you have to have that the brick and mortar. But I said with this company, no, we don't. We quickly chose AWS as a partner. We wanted to be a serverless architect, sure. So I got some things right, but I thought, you know what, I don't need in-house developers. I'll just use some companies. So that's what I mean. I knew I didn't know, but I thought that I could just go out there and do an RFP and choose the right company. I did hire a project manager, and so I spun my wheels maybe over a year, spending a lot of money and time on it. And then I finally realized I have to bring in a full-time project manager, technical manager, and I found someone. Was very fortuitous that I found this young man. And again, I'm working with some of the people I worked with before, but this is different. This is software as a service. It's you know AWS. At that time, we were on the leading edge of the serverless architecture, and so I was able to find this young man who was born in Pakistan, lived in Dubai, came to Canada, lived in Mississauga, and he loved Canada, the opportunities, but he had worked for a multinational ed tech company, and a software as a service company. So I thought, and he had managed multiple teams across many time zones, geographical areas. So I brought him in, and he was going to manage the the contractor that we were using. And finally, he said, we have to bring we have to bring it in house. So then we were able to build our
Sherry, we're not
no,
getting where
no.
we need to
And so
go.
again, that's because I didn't know what I didn't know, and then also not having the network. in the data area and in the AI area. It's taken me a lot longer than it did with my previous startups to get going. And so our first product was this platform to measure the worldwide impact of the Faculty of Math at Waterloo, and they still use our platform, bringing in the stakeholders and not only measuring what they set the metrics, uh, measuring that and getting the data and bringing it all in, but also to visualize impact. So we were working with new technologies and uh, new software packages to try to not to visualize it too. So it was exciting. I learned a lot, and but it just wouldn't scale. It's a lot of work for one organization to do that. And then, so we identified another product also with the University of Waterloo Co-op program, where we looked at their program impact and did a feedback loop for them and actionable insights. Again, quite data intensive, and I said it just doesn't scale. We have to continue talking to the customer and find out what keeps them up at night. What real problem do they have? And that's when we had identified the the problem that we're solving with our current product, Research Impact, is to match funding opportunities with researchers, with industry partners, and using AI and machine learning. And so there's $2.5 trillion of research globally available. That's U.S. dollars, and there it's estimated that 30% of that is wasted.
Wow. So you can make a huge impact
Yes,
if you can
and
just take a
and get
slice.
help people to be more efficient, the process, and to get the best research results. Because we have some huge problems here that we have to solve, and if we are wasting that much money that could go to fundamental and breakthrough research, come on, it's a no brainer. But but it's still, working with universities and colleges. We're doing better on the industry partner side. We have several relationships with Hall Tech, Innovation Factory now, and other regional innovation centers. Plus, we just announced one with AI partnerships. They have 130 companies that they work with, 80 in Canada, 50 in the US, to help them. They're all AI. Utilizing AI or developing AI, and they need funding too. So diluted funding. So yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, and that opens up the I think talk
yes,
about raising money. And I know that with Profound Impact you were raising money and entering the rooms full of mostly not women who you were talking to, and you ended up taking a novel approach when you raised your round, which really was reaching out to you became your own salesperson once again, and you reached into your network and to the relationships you had in order to close the
yes.
round you were trying to
So
raise.
what I want to step back, that when I was raising money for my previous companies, and Scott passed away right when we were raising a round, and I was able to complete that round without him. Um, and but but I had such credibility in that space and experience. And so it wasn't difficult to find the investors. I hate to say that, because now it's so difficult for me that now I'm in a new area, um, uh, trying to sell to a customer base. When people say, "Oh, you're selling universities," forget it. It takes forever. So, uh, so yeah, so lack of experience, not having the credibility in the space made it more difficult for me. So when I was going out, and there were a lot of people raising now, and so pitching to the angel networks, which takes, they vet um, everyone coming through the door, and they probably get 60 per month or more, and they're down to two or three or four every month to present. So it's the vetting process itself, and then once you're there, getting them to respond, because they listen to a lot of pitches. So I was just not getting the response, and I was frustrated about it. um, I found that was pitch. I was the only woman founder pitching, and there were, as I said, not very many women in the audience. So I decided, you know what, this is not working for me, and I listened to the input that the the potential investors at the angel networks gave me, and I did everything that they said to do. You know, but I was still not getting the response that I needed. So I I called up a friend of mine who runs a family office in Toronto, and I said I'd like to come in and do a pitch to your wealthy patrons, clients, and I would love to have as many women in the room. And then I networked with some of my other friends that were women of wealth that had never invested angel invested before, and I thought this is a good opportunity, and I was able to close my round at 3.125 million, with the majority being first time female angel investors.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so, that obviously sets you up to continue growing the company,
Yes.
but it also set
So
you up to
I
found
brought I
something else.
one of my good friends and long-term friends is Deborah Rosati, and she had been with Celtic House. She'd been VC. She'd been with startup. In fact, that was a company I had interviewed and with in Ottawa was her company. She was the CFO of that company. Anyway, so I knew her a long time, and so I invited her to be an investor and then also to come on our board as chairman of the board, chairperson of the board, and so she came with me to the pitches, most of them, and she saw the frustration that I was having, and that I wasn't making any progress. She also came to the family office and saw the response there that was quite different. So she said, "Why don't we? This is just not you, Sherry. This is women in general, and there's 1.6 or 1.9% all VCs goes to women led ventures, and da, 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 we know all the statistics, and how do we change that?" So we said, well, we want to see if what we can do, and so she reached out to Lara Zink, who was at that time with the women capital markets, and we just said we want to do something. Quit talking about it. What could we do? We did not want to be a fund. We know women led funds out there, so we just wanted to be a collective to help bridge that funding gap for for seed and pre-seed uh, funding for women led ventures. And how do we do that? We said let's women funding women started, and we said it's a collective, and this is what we're going to do, and we have this kind of to help the ecosystem to get more female angel investors. And then about that time, the 51 published their research on if we could get women to invest at the level that men invest, we could add $3.2 trillion to the available capital. And so that's what we're doing with this women funding women, is to uh, amplify what's going on, work with the angel groups, work with the VC funds that are focusing on, well, almost all of them will listen to women, and then also be aware of the education that's out there, the courses that are available for learning how to invest, how to become an angel investor, what to look for, and then also to work with the VCs too, to say there's a unconscious bias here in the process. And so what can we do in that area too? So we're really not the band. We're not playing the instruments, but we're trying to lead the orchestra to to say, okay, we have all of this valuable resources here and here and here. Let's bring a spotlight and let's see if we can do something in a collective.
Hmm. And I think what I like about it is the idea of that collective. So let's stop worrying about whose turf is where and who's working at what, but how do we all come together and find that common
Yes.
ground
So
to
we had
raise everybody
we
up?
had our launch in February 7th, and we had a limited space, so we were oversubscribed. Always love that. And then the next day, that was the launch. And then the next day, we did a funder founder roundtable, which we had targeted 20 companies. We had them, but few couldn't make it at the last minute. So I believe we had 18 companies, women-led ventures, all across industries, from retail to food to to agriculture, um, and and even there was technology in there, high tech too. So it was great to see that, and bringing in the funders. The funders, we had VCs, we had angel investors, we have aspiring VCs out of a cohort out of uh, the Canadian Capital Ventures Fund, association, and so it was great. So we were able to match this matchmaking, and the individuals were able to speak to the funders were able to move around and speak to many different of the founders. So that's just the beginning. We don't want it to end there. We're looking at doing local events, and I appreciate the events that Angel One hosted at Hall Tech, a tech place. Um, that's what we wanted to see. We wanted to see that, and then I attended another one such as that G10 in Waterloo was involved in. So we're seeing that, and we want to see more of the activities at the local level. We are doing an event in Vancouver, um, similar to the one in Toronto, and it's October the 30th and 31st. So yes, so women funding women. Let's go. Let's get out there and let's make a difference, and let's be the catalyst for change.
Yeah. Well, and that is really why I'm doing this show, is to really share stories, so that we can be what we see in the world.
Yes.
And so I think, seeing somebody, who like you has been able to exit and found several businesses, or found then exit, I guess is
Mhm.
probably the right order. I think, helps people understand, that it's possible,
Yes.
and that they can become a trailblazer and do that also. And so I think that, the kind of like raising of us all up is a really important piece for us.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
We just need to keep going. Put that,
Yep.
as you said,
We
the
do.
dance. Keep dancing. One
Yep.
step forward, two steps back. Keep going because we are
Exactly.
making
Exactly.
progress.
Yes. Yep. And we just need to keep working on it and keep talking about it.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for coming and sharing your story today. And it was great having this conversation with you. And I look forward to watching your journey as you grow this business.
Well, thank you, Julie, again for this opportunity. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from any of the audience. To reach out to me through LinkedIn. Okay.
Awesome. And we'll include your LinkedIn link in the show notes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. Figure 8 isn't just a podcast. It's a way of seeing the big, gorgeous goals of women entrepreneurs coming to life. If you're interested in learning more, you can find my book, Big Gorgeous Goals, on Amazon anywhere you might live. For more about my growth and leadership training programs, visit www.julieellis.ca to see how we might work together. Read my blog or sign up to get your free diagnostic. Are you ready for growth? Once again, that's www.julieellis.ca. When we work together, we all win. See you again soon for another episode of Figure 8.